All right, YouTube. First up, we've got the latest polling data showing the Conservatives still with a very healthy lead in the uh, chances to win the next federal election. The Conservatives have enjoyed a substantial lead for quite some time now, as there is widespread dissatisfaction with the Trudeau government, which has racked up trillions of dollars in debt. The economy has been stagnant. We're seeing the growth of public sector spending, but there's very little real economic development going on in Canada at the moment. Now, we're still quite a ways out from the election date, uh, so anything can happen. There's a lot of leftists in Canada that will not support the Conservative Party, whatever dissatisfaction they might have with the Trudeau Liberals. And maybe we'll see another coalition government. But right now, the trend has been looking pretty strong for the Conservatives. Although I'd like to get a breakdown of how that support is distributed, because with the first past the post system, you don't get any premium for running up the score in a district where you already have a lot of votes. So the polling numbers, it's not necessarily just like how many people will vote for you, but really the question is how many people will vote for you in these swing ridings and who's going to win these
Welcome to
contested
CTV News Trendline
areas.
with
How
Michael
are the
Skittle and
Conservatives going to
Nick
do in
Daniels.
Ontario, in Quebec?
Nick, we often talk about the conservative lead over the liberals. I thought for this episode we might dig in a little bit into the NDP support. What's the latest ballot tracking?
Latest Nanos Weekly ballot tracking, drum roll. Conservatives 39, Liberals 25, NDP 20, Bloc at 8, Green Party at 5, People's Party at 1.5. So, was a 20-point advantage for the Conservatives. Now about a 15-point advantage or thereabouts. So, that's still pretty good. But I think if you're a conservative, you want to make sure that it doesn't keep going down, because, obviously a 20-point advantage would have been a massive victory if the election had occurred. But right now we see the margin, at least between the Conservatives and the Liberals, going down, but still pretty significant.
And the
Yeah, 15 points is a huge lead. I mean, people are really unhappy with Justin Trudeau, with the carbon tax, with his leadership in general. I mean, Trudeau represents the woke agenda to a T, and a lot of Canadians are fed up with cultural Marxism infesting our schools. This whole ideology of whatever is contrary to traditional Western values needs to be celebrated, promoted. Uh, so you've got widespread opposition to both the social agenda and the economic program of the Trudeau Liberals, which has been corporate welfare, uh, these huge, massive government spending programs. Like they wanted to have the charity, the We Charity, the $1 billion jobs program for teenagers or young adults, which thankfully was canceled. But I think there's a big problem with that idea of the government being vicariously, a massive employer, because then those jobs are going to be political. They're going to go to, people with influence. It's not going to be like an open competition where everybody's going to have the same equal chance. They're going to go to the sons and daughters of people who are politically connected. Anyway, the whole thing was canceled, so that's a good thing. I think there's still a lot of resentment over the way that the pandemic was handled and the general consensus among the social democratic elite that you had to shut down the economy. And now, I think at the time, with the information that we had, a lot of the initial first steps were reasonable. We didn't realize then that the COVID virus was so benign that the mortality rate was targeted among people that were 70, 80 years old, people that were in pretty weak condition anyway. But in retrospect, I think the lockdown was a horrible mistake. Um, the way that anti-vaxxers were targeted, the language that was used towards them, the whole rise of the medical bureaucracy being in charge. You had people, the police were out there questioning anybody who went for a walk. I mean, it was just a really absurd time in Canadian history. I think a lot of Canadians are still very, very upset about what happened and want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. At the same time, we've got the WEF and the agenda of the Trudeau regime there. Obviously, the Trudeau government is very closely linked with Klaus Schwab, the WF. They're entirely on board with the Great Reset. This idea that we can't have actual capitalism, we need shareholder capitalism, aka we need global socialism, one world government with Charles Schwab, Justin Trudeau, and the rest of the social democratic elites firmly ensconced within positions of authority, planning the economy for the so-called greater good, to combat the alleged danger of climate change. In reality, what they really want is power and money. They want to control the world, and they want to take away human freedom. But at the same time, I mean, there's just so many leftists in Canada, so many people that believe in socialism and welfareism, and it's going to be a hard sell to turn around what has been decades of quote unquote progress when really we've been headed in the wrong direction. Government spending is such a huge part of the economy now, um, and that's really bad in context of economic growth, because real growth comes from the private sector. When you have government spending at such a high level, well, where is that money coming from? It's coming from the private sector. It's coming from the economic class. That is, people who get up and work for a living every day, be they businessmen or workers. So it's coming out of their salaries and out of their revenue in taxes, and then it's being spent by the political class on uh, the salaries of politicians and bureaucrats, on enriching special interests, on government junkets, and all this consumption spending. So what does that mean in the long run? It means that we're seeing resources diverted away from the production of wealth towards consumption spending for the political class, and that has a chilling effect on economic growth, as does inflation. We've seen record inflation under the Trudeau government. The official figures don't even touch the surface of how much inflation there actually was. Uh, you know, you look at Canadians that are seeing rent prices doubling over less than a decade, like 5 years. They're seeing rent prices doubling. They're seeing prices at the grocery store increasing so rapidly, and they're trying to tell us, oh yeah, inflation is 3%. Well, no, it's not. Okay, don't even dare say that the average Canadian has seen a 3% increase in the cost of living, because that's a lie. All right, that is just a bald-faced lie, and I don't care what statistics you use to rationalize it. The lived experience of the average Canadian will tell you that is not true. Um, we're seeing grocery prices go up very fast, and people want to blame greedy corporations. Look, corporations are always greedy. Everybody's always greedy, but that you don't unilaterally set prices. Prices are determined by supply and demand. So the grocery store margins are still very, very small. It's not like they're taking a huge cut there, and if they were, then other firms could undercut them. Uh, it's inflation. The government's printing too much money because they're spending too much money, and this is leading to high levels of inflation that is unsustainable.
So, not too far behind the Liberals, by-election in Ontario, and you noticed something interesting about the NDP support there.
Yeah, here's one thing to watch out for is these by-elections. What do we learn from the by-elections? Well, what we've seen in the most recent by-election and a couple of the other ones is that at the last minute, NDP support goes down and it goes into the Liberal column. It doesn't necessarily help the Liberals win the riding. It didn't help them in Durham, but NDP being lower than the last federal election, and that being the dynamic. So think of it this way, Michael: if the NDP support, say there's five.
I mean, I'm not surprised the NDP support is dropping in general. Jagmeet is completely out of touch with your average Canadian. And the fact of the matter is, they're just too left wing. They're socialists, and Canadians don't want that. Your average Canadian supports the market economy. They might be in favor of the welfare state and social safety net. They might be in favor of government spending in that degree, but they don't want total government control of the economy. They're not idiots. They know what happened in Russia. They know what happened in China and every other country that's tried that. Nobody wants Canada to become the next Cuba, except for the radical left, which includes like half the NDP. So, I mean, I don't see any real chance of the NDP increasing their support. They might continue to draw support away from the Liberals, which would be a good thing.
Or orange column that are actually disaffected Liberals. These are the people that I think Justin Trudeau and the Liberals will hope that they will hold their nose and vote Liberal when it comes to an actual election. So one of the things we have to remember about
I mean, right now there's a lot of. I mean, the policies between the Conservatives and the Liberals are not that different at the end of the day. The Conservatives might want to decrease spending a little bit. The Liberals increase it, but they're not. As much as the rhetoric may differ. When it comes to actual policies, they're not that different. There's a lot of Liberals that will be crossing over to the Conservatives that are saying, "Hey, wait a second, this is not sustainable. We're in a debt crisis right now. There's more debt than we had in the '90s during our last sovereign debt crisis. I mean, this is crazy, and it's not sustainable. There's a lot of voters, I think, that are very concerned about the fiscal policies of the Trudeau government. You gotta understand, it was the Liberal Party that under Jean Chrétien that stepped in the last time there was this similar spending crisis where the government was spending too much money. There was too much debt. It was unsustainable. I mean, you look at the interest payments on our debt. Is like $40 billion a year. That's more than we spend on our military. You can't tell me that that's sustainable, especially not when you've got a stagnant economy. When the economy's not growing, maybe if the economy had been growing by 2 or 3% every year, for the last decade, it would be different. But it wasn't because, spoiler alert, they shut the economy down. They killed a lot of small businesses. They had everybody staying inside for a year, and it really sabotaged the economy, obviously. And for what? At the end of the day, did it even save any lives?
Is that there's no repercussion because there's no federal election right now. I think the Liberal and NDP numbers could be different if the election was the next day or this week. And so just think of it this way. We said Conservatives with a 15-point advantage. If what's happening in these by-election holds up, perhaps the true advantage that the Conservatives have is not 15 points. Maybe it's 10 right now. So
the other thing is that Pierre Pierre Polievre has been running a really milquetoast campaign. You know, he used to be making some noise about auditing the Bank of Canada, but he's been very careful, I guess, with the polls in his favor to appear as centrist as possible. So I think this might lead to his base cooling a little bit. Maybe that'll be compensated by enough liberals jumping ship. Maybe it won't.
Closer to being competitive with the federal Conservatives.
Now, Nick, under the leadership of Justin Trudeau, we've seen the Liberals occupy a lot of the political space, usually taken up by the NDP. I think cannabis legalization is a famous or obvious example of that. So the NDP has to really struggle.
I will say definitely cannabis legalization, one of the good things the Trudeau government has done, pretty widely popular. And, you know, we've seen the price of weed just plummet under the Trudeau government. You can get an ounce of weed for like $40, $50 now. And it's not because of the legal stores, by the way. But there's been a massive growth in the black market of marijuana. Everybody's selling online now through Canada Post is doing the delivery, I guess. And you mail order, you know, you send them $100, you get your baggies of weed, and it's such a better market. I mean, I used to have to pay like $200 to get an ounce, and this is like, you know, back, God, am I this old? 15 years ago. So with inflation, you know, marijuana is like 10 times as cheap as it used to be, or it's 10% of the price, you know, in real terms when you adjust for inflation. And this is good stuff too, you know. So I guess everybody's just growing it themselves and selling it over the internet. The weed stores themselves are pretty underwhelming. For one thing, they all look like carbon copies of each other. It's weird. It's freaky. I don't like it. The weed's too dry. I mean, it's good that it's legal. I don't like the way that legalization was done. I think that it should have been done without licensure. You know, let anybody have a free market in marijuana. Let anybody grow and sell, and instead you got to get these licenses, which are really expensive. So it's restricted to, and that's the problem with capitalism in Canada in general right now, is that there's too many regulations, there's too many controls, there's not enough of an actual free market where people can just enter. You know, it's instead it's too restrictive. You got to get the license. You know, like for example, you wanna like start a food truck and sell food. You know, that's very difficult to get the approval for unless you're selling hot dogs. Okay, but how stupid is that? Because hot dogs are like, they're not a great food. You know, that's not what we want for sale on our streets. We'd rather have, you know, Heroes. Okay, Heroes, there's a lot of in like London, whatever. Maybe it's a bad example. But my point is that, you know, it's really, there's a lot of regulations that are unnecessary. Whereas, like, in Mexico, people could just set up like a taco stand on an unused corner, and it's cool. Nobody would ever shut that down. You know, they would just go buy some tacos if they wanted it. So we're a society of rules and regulations that some of them are good, some of them make sense. Obviously, uh, there are concerns about food safety and in that, but I think at the same time, there's too much unnecessary regulation and too much control and not enough freedom. Really, at the end of the day, consumers should be able to make the judgment, and it should be easier for people to participate in the market economy as entrepreneurs. This shouldn't be something that is strictly the providence of wealthy corporations that have the technical know-how to to navigate these regulatory burdens, but it should be anybody that knows how to make a product. They want to sell it on the market. They should be able to. And this was going on during the lockdown to some degree. There was people, that were sort of making like black market pizzas and black market cookies, because they had nothing but time on their hands. They know how to make this stuff, so they just sell it out of their kitchen. And why not? Why can't that be a thing? Why do we really need the government to crack down on that? Like, if I want to buy a pizza from somebody, why does the government need to involve themselves in that exchange? Why don't they just leave that alone and let me worry about any potential risks?
To distinguish themselves to voters. Recently, we saw an NDP motion calling on Canada to recognize the state of Palestine. It was approved with sort of a watered down version, I suppose you could say, and the Liberals did come on board after these amendments. Is this something we'll increasingly see from the NDP?
Absolutely, because the thing is that if they don't differentiate themselves from the Liberals, they will get absolutely crushed, because people will just say, for a few years you propped up the Liberals and kept Justin Trudeau in power, and people won't see a significant difference. And
I don't even want to get into the whole Palestine-Israel thing. I mean, that is a whole can of worms. Like I respect, I have sympathy for oppressed and suffering people anywhere, and the fact of the matter is, the Palestinians did have their land stolen from them, so many years ago. But at the same time, I have a lot of sympathy for the Israeli side of the issue, which is that as they say, if Hamas were to lay down their arms and stop fighting tomorrow, there would be peace. But if Israel were to do it, they would Hamas would probably keep launching these rockets. So I don't think Hamas is really interested in peace. And I mean, at the same time, Israel is like a regional superpower, and it's terrible what's happening to the Palestinian people. So many deaths as a result of the. And then the other side of the situation is like, I don't really buy this whole argument about how civilian casualties are okay so long as they're collateral damage, so long as you're trying to kill somebody else. It's okay if you kill civilians. Like, that's somehow morally superior to trying to kill civilians and killing civilians. I think that killing civilians is wrong in either situation. Um, but then obviously the question would be: so what can Israel do in response to Hamas attacks? So, and like I said, I don't really want to get into that because what can they do? And it's a whole can of worms. Uh, you know, um, yeah. But as to recognizing Palestine, I don't really care either way. I mean, I would like Canada to take more of a non-interventionist approach when it comes to anything going on overseas. We should stop sending money to Palestine or to Israel. If we're sending money to either country, we should stop spending money to Ukraine. We should stop. We should stop. Basically, we should not get involved in global affairs. We should have a policy of trade and friendship with all nations, but we should not be sending Canadians, hard-earned taxpayers, dollars overseas, which the Trudeau government has been doing at an alarming rate. Financing all sorts of programs overseas of dubious merit. At the same time that so many Canadians are struggling, and at the end of the day, these taxes add up. Even if it's a small percentage of the federal budget for any one individual program, they've got so many different programs that it all just adds up, and the tax burden that the average Canadian family is suffering under is extreme. The government takes a huge portion of our income and spends it on frivolous, wasteful programs that and it just needs to stop. It just needs
And I
to
think that's
stop.
why, the purpose of this vote on recognizing the Palestinian state is probably good politics, at least for the New Democrats, because it creates a wedge within the Liberals, because the Liberals are divided on this issue, and it allows the New Democrats to differentiate themselves. So think of the NDP actually.
Yeah, but
Now
at the same time, like, nobody cares.
Liberals are getting ready for the election. The Conservatives
I mean,
are
maybe some radical leftist uh, people who love to make Palestine like their central issue care, but your average Canadian, they're not really going to care. They don't really care about Israel Palestine unless you're like a hardcore Zionist or a hardcore leftist. Like, that's just not the hot button topic in Canada, I think.
we managed to deliver on a couple of things like pharmacare and the dental plan.
And pharmacare is another awful idea. I mean, the government, there's already so much debt, and now the government's going to pay for everybody's medicine. We're talking another 30, 40 billion a year. Some of that will be the government's already paying for, like, provincially uh, with the, like, welfare and other sort of support for low income people, and then obviously the Canadian public would be saving money as well. But I think it's a bad idea. We can't afford it. We don't have the money. We're already in massive amounts of debt. The deficit's already huge. So where's the money going to come from? And they say that we're going to save money because we're buying in bulk, but the reality is, I think that, like, if you look at in the United States the introduction of Medicare and Medicaid, along with healthcare costs. Okay, so this happened in the 70s where you had the introduction of Medicare and Medicaid, or sorry, actually 1965. So that's here on this chart. This it's right where the lines begin to diverge, and you get the consumer price index, the lower line, and then the Medicare price index. So as soon as the government came in and started playing a major role in purchasing medical services, the price started to climb. Why? Because the government has basically unlimited purchasing power. So this constitutes artificial demand. And the same thing is going to be done with prescription drugs. You're going to have artificial demand. Now, uh, that's part of the problem. The other part is you need to artificially restrict supply. So if you have artificial demand along with artificial restrictions on supply, then the price is going to go up. That's what uh, anytime somebody's tried to monopolize an industry, their goal is to reduce the total production and to thus get a higher per unit cost, because supply and demand, right? Decrease supply, and then if demand stays the same, price goes up. So the supply of drugs is artificially reduced already by the patent system. So if we introduce pharmacare and unlimited government funds paying for all these drugs, then it stands to reason that the price could go sky high. And if the government responds with price controls, which they might, that might help because um, we're not dealing with prices that are determined by like the market clearing rate, where supply and demand intersect. Uh, we're dealing with the artificial rates, so they might have to do that, but then if they're not careful, they set the price control at the wrong place. You're gonna end up with shortages. And then also, I mean, okay, right now it's just like insulin and birth control. Um, Insulin already, I mean, you could control type 2 diabetes with diet and exercise. If you restrict carbohydrates, if you eat like an all meat diet, you will completely halt diabetes. Because diabetes is not actually a disease per se. It is the term for the damage caused to your body by insulin, as insulin is triggered when you ingest carbohydrates or sugars, uh, as they get stored on your body as adipose tissue. But back to pharmacare, you know, what's this going to do to the opioid crisis? What's this going to do with all the junkies on fentanyl? Are they going to have their drugs covered by this as well? Um, And if not, are Canadians that are in pain that have legitimate need for oxys or whatever, are they going to have to pay the taxes to fund the pharmacare system and then also pay for their drugs themselves? Um, and then what about the really expensive drugs? Are they going to be covered or not? We'll see how it plays out. I think it's a bad idea. I don't think we're anywhere near the fiscal position to start thinking about spending a lot of money on a new government program. I think actually we need to be doing the opposite. We need to be cutting government spending. We should be looking at eliminating ministries entirely. We should be looking at downsizing, selling off government assets like crown corporations or government owned buildings. We should be looking at dramatic reductions in government spending, not uh, creating new government programs. If we want to get serious about paying down the debt and getting to a better fiscal position. Well, knowing Trudeau, it will be an election goodie budget. All right, I've had enough of these clowns. Zach out.